The prairie evening stretched wide, the sky bruised purple with the last threads of sun unraveling into the horizon. The light slanted low, gold fading into shadow, and the dust carried on the wind like old secrets, brushing across dry grass that shivered with every whisper of breeze. The bones of a shack stood nearby, its roof sagging inward, its timbers bowed as if tired of standing watch against the relentless years. It had once been shelter for some weary soul, but now it lay half-collapsed, a forgotten relic on a land that swallowed most memories whole. A cowboy rode toward it, his silhouette carved against the dimming light, reins loose in his calloused hand. His hat brim shadowed his face, but his bearing was steady, his horse's hooves beating slow and unhurried against the brittle earth. He had not expected anything here. This place was long abandoned, a graveyard of silence. Yet something tugged at him, some instinct that made him draw near, as if the land itself had held its breath for him to come. And then he saw her. Beneath the crooked ribs of the fallen shack, in the hollow where boards gave the smallest protection from wind, a figure lay bound, veiled and still. The sight froze him in the saddle. It was no ghost, no trick of the fading light. It was a human form, tied as if discarded, the veil over her head fluttering faintly in the restless breeze. He swung down, boots crunching dry earth. The stillness wrapped tighter, a silence so deep it made his breath slow, his heart wary. He approached as though stepping into a church, careful, reverent, already knowing his life was about to bend in a way he could not yet name. The figure stirred. Thin wrists strained weakly against the rope. And then her voice came, faint, cracked by thirst and suffering, yet carrying an iron dignity that even despair could not erase. "Please, kill me, but don't look under the veil." The words cut through him like shattered glass. He stopped mid-step, air locked in his chest. That voice, fragile, weary, stirred something half-buried in him, like an old melody remembered in fragments. He moved closer, knelt, his fingers brushing coarse rope. Her plea trembled in the air, desperate, yet beneath it was something she protected fiercely. A secret, hidden even at death's edge. His instincts warred. Mercy, perhaps, would have been in lifting his knife to grant her wish. Yet another mercy, harder, crueler but truer, was to see her, to give her back her name and face, to let her not vanish faceless into the earth. His hand trembled as he reached for the veil. She turned away, weak arms twitching, as if she could still hide forever. But the veil slipped free. And the world stopped. Her features, though bruised, though hollow from hunger and cruelty, were achingly familiar. The curve of her cheek, the dark well of her eyes, the faint scar above her brow, all of it rushed back. Years folded into one breath. It was her. His first love, the girl whose laughter once drifted across the meadows of his youth. The one torn from him by venomous whispers, by a stepmother's cruel tongue that dripped poison until the town turned cold. He had thought her lost forever, vanished into shadows, maybe dead. And here she was, bound and veiled, left to die like refuse. Her lips quivered, shame staining every word. "You should have left me," she whispered, her voice bleeding sorrow. "They mocked me, tied me, said I was too ruined to live. Better you'd never seen." He could not speak at first. His throat burned, his heart thundered. He remembered the meadow, the girl she was, the day she was cast out, the helpless rage that had filled him when lies drowned truth. He remembered nights he tried to bury her memory, and mornings he still heard her laughter in the wind. At last he found his voice, low and rough from years of solitude. "No. I was meant to see." With his knife, he cut her bonds. The ropes fell away like a serpent's shed skin, leaving angry welts around her wrists. She tried to rise, but her legs buckled. He caught her, arms steady, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. She resisted at first, pride flickering even in her weakness, but then she sagged against him, surrendering not to despair but to the strange safety of his presence. He carried her to his horse, mounted, and held her close as they rode into the night. The prairie stretched endless, indifferent, but above them the stars awakened, scattered like lanterns, bearing silent witness. His cabin waited at the valley's edge, a place of wood and smoke, where loneliness had lived long. He laid her on his bed, covered her with a wool quilt worn by winters past. He did not press her with questions. He only set water beside her, stoked the fire high, and sat in the chair by the door, his shadow long across the floor. Sleep eluded him, for he kept turning to watch her breathe, as if at any moment the world might take her away again. Morning came pale and hushed. She stirred, eyes opening to the slant of light across the room. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the water. Each swallow steadied her voice, her gaze, her breath. He fetched a basin, filled it with warm water, and placed it near. He said nothing, only set a folded cloth by her side. She looked at him, shame clouding her face, expecting pity. But his eyes held only recognition, steady and unflinching, seeing not ruin but resilience. She washed herself in silence, every movement both humbling and healing. By noon, she tried to stand. Stubborn, as she had always been, though her body shook. He stepped close, offering his arm. She hesitated, then leaned on him. Together they crossed the cabin, each step a fragile reclaiming of dignity. Days blurred into rhythm. He worked outside, fences mended, wood chopped, stock tended. Always when he returned, she was there, quieter each day, stronger each day. She swept when she could, fetched water though her arms quivered. He let her, for pity could wound, but when she faltered, he took the weight from her hands without explanation. At night, the fires softened their silence. Sometimes she spoke, fragments of her years, of her stepmother's lies, of neighbors who looked at her with hunger or contempt, of the final cruelty of being bound and abandoned. She spoke flatly, without tears, for sorrow had been wrung out long ago. He listened. He never interrupted, never offered thin comforts. He let the words settle like ash, his silence honoring them. In that quiet, she felt something she had not known in years, the dignity of being heard. The old neighbor woman, Mrs. Hargrove, came once with bread. She glanced at the veiled figure inside and frowned. "Folks will talk," she warned, sharp as frost. "They'll say you keep shame under your roof." "Let them," he answered, closing the door. She lingered outside, pity in her gaze, but he did not bend. The woman in his cabin was no shame. She was truth, and truth deserved tending more than gossip. Yet gossip rippled wider. In the saloon, men muttered, saying no good would come of it. Some claimed she was cursed, others that he was a fool. A few spoke darkly of running her off. He heard whispers but stayed silent. His life narrowing to the fire's glow, and the slow healing of the woman fate had returned to him. Still, fear crept into her. She began to hum again, softly, when she thought herself alone. But when rumor reached her ears that the town meant to come and see for themselves, her strength faltered. She packed what little she had, ready to slip away before dawn. He caught her hand. His voice was steady. No more running. That morning, when the crowd gathered near his cabin, curious and cruel, he stepped outside with her. The veil still covered her bruised face, and she trembled under their stares. Murmurs rose, sharp as stones. He reached for his hat, broad-brimmed and dust-worn, and set it gently on her head. The gesture was simple, but it thundered louder than any sermon. "She is mine," he said, his voice carrying. She was lost, but never forgotten. Silence fell. Some turned away, muttering. Others stared, unsettled. But none dared answer, for his stance was stone against the wind. That very afternoon, they went to the meadow where, as youths, they had once dreamed. The preacher spoke few words. Sunlight spilled across them, warm and merciful. He took her hand, covering it with his own, sealing a vow years in the waiting. Tears ran freely down her face, but they were not sorrow. They were release, the breaking of chains. He held her, his strength wrapping her as the land itself seemed to bless them. When dusk settled, they returned to his cabin, no longer hollow but alive with quiet promise. The world outside would go on whispering, but within those walls bloomed something stronger. Love that had endured cruelty, shame, and time's erosion. Love that had been buried, veiled, and yet still risen. And if you are listening now, somewhere across this wide world, let this truth rest with you. Love is not the absence of scars but the courage to see them and stay. What cruelty casts aside, kindness can lift. What the world calls ruined, may yet be the vessel of grace. Before you go, tell me, where in the world are you watching from tonight? And if this story touched your heart, click on the tale waiting on your screen. It will carry you deeper into the wild, tender heart of the West.